Hello everyone, I hope you are doing well. Oh, let's see if I can look into the camera today. I've been traveling around for the last 2 weeks, but hopefully you have not felt my absence too hardly because I had pre-recorded 2 videos that I released on the last 2 Sundays. Nevertheless, I am back home in France for a few days before I fly back to Ireland. And next time I talk to you will be, next Sunday I'll be recording from Ireland. So I hope you had a beautiful Christmas, and I hope that you are looking forward to New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, to the celebration of the New Year. In the meantime, if you're so inclined, you can spend a bit of time with me today where we're going to be discussing Carl Jung, the originator of the whole plethora, the galaxy of systems for the analysis of personality. The reason why I want to discuss Mr. or Dr. Jung is that I'm currently reading a book by Carl Jung. It's not only by him because it's been edited by collaborators. It's not necessarily the book that's the most talked about or celebrated, and yet it is probably the book that, with the likely exception of psychological types, I would consider the most important in my understanding of Jung, Jungianism, Jung's approach, Jung's development, Jung's conception of the unconscious, the types, and informing Jungian existentialism, which, as you know, is my sort of self-titled philosophical movement, and in the trend of a exploration of personality types. Now, what is this book? You are likely curious to hear what book I'm talking about. You noticed I didn't do the advertising for my books because I don't have them anymore. I possibly have. Actually, you know what? I have this one. I just found out about it. So yeah, if you would like to get a copy of the Ecstatic Soul, my book on the INFJ, check the links below. All the links are available. There's also links to the Infinite Castle, my new novel. This is a book in-depth study of the INFJ. The Infinite Castle is a novel that explores a lot of INFJ themes, but it's in fiction and it's not directly and explicitly about INFJs. But both books have gotten really good feedback so far. So yeah, this one is a minor classic maybe at this point. So consider getting it. Less than $10 for both. So what is the book that I'm talking about? I'm starting to titillate you, I'm sure, at this point. It's called Memories, Dreams, Reflections, and it's a book that I'm reading in PDF. I don't have it here to show it to you, but it's essentially Jung's autobiography, and there's probably several or many among you who have at the very least heard of the book. Maybe likely there will be some among you who have read the book, and when it comes to those who have read the book, I would be very eager for you to share some of your impressions in the comments, because it is so enlightening to read Jung talking about his life and career. But you see, Jung being Jung, he's not really giving you a detailed external factual account of what his career and life have been. He is not focused very much on the external side of things. He's mostly talking about his internal development across the years. He starts from childhood and ends with old age. Spends a lot of time obviously talking about his most productive years as a young psychiatrist, as a more experienced psychiatrist, as the creator and the inventor of analytical psychology, the break with Freud. All these themes are discussed in quite a bit of detail in the book. But there's a lot about his internal development, how he came to have the views he has, including on psychological types, obviously a lot about the unconscious and the libido. about the archetypes, about the primordial images of all sorts, and how for him dreams and the interpretation of his own dreams were very much formative events and experiences in terms of how his intellectual development took place. And I'm in fact not quite finished with the book. I have probably another 100 pages to read or so. It's about 450 pages. And it's so interesting to read him also from the perspective of getting a closer understanding, a closer sense of his type. Because as you probably know, in the community, in the online community, there is a bit of disagreement as to what is Jung's type is or was. The majority believes INFJ, and it's usually somewhat of a consensus that, you know, on the various websites that he was an INFJ, but there's a significant minority of undercurrents of people who think he was an INTP, partly on the basis of his writings, partly on the basis of one interview that he gave where he said that he strongly identified with thinking. And since it's quite clear when you read him that both in terms of his writing styles and his life, he was an introverted man, well, introverted thinker, then people think intuitive, therefore INTP. I've made videos before to defend the perspective according to which Jung was not INTP, but more likely INFJ. One such argument that I provided, which was what you could describe as a negative argument, is that Jung actually doesn't have the TI that people seem to think he has. It's certainly not TI hero. You know, it's not a manifestation of dominant TI, where a great focus of dominant TI's work is on systematization of thought and thinking, of the content of thought and thinking, systematization and clarification, simplification, getting rid of all that is extraneous to the essence of the thing that is being explored in thought. The philosopher Immanuel Kant provides a useful distinction, again from philosophy, between what he calls essence and accident. So if you take, say, this straw, it's a straw, okay? I use it when I drink Coke to protect my teeth. Now, the fact that it's yellow, right, is not part of the essence of a straw. Because if I took this straw and painted it red, it would still be a straw, okay? So it's not part of its essence, it's what's called an accidental property. It's an accidental property. Just in the same way that if I were to sort of snip off a little bit of the straw, it would still remain a straw. So that again would be an accident. An essential property versus an accidental property. TI leads are very focused on being systematic and reducing concepts down to their essential properties. They get rid of the accidental properties. They remove them. That's how they proceed. And Carl Jung doesn't do that at all. In fact, he considers that the accidental properties of dreams, for instance, since he's always going on about dreams, not just in his theoretical works, but in his autobiography, it seems almost as if the analysis of his dreams is the principal material from which he works. And of course, then the analysis of the dreams of his patients. But he started with analysis of his own dreams, first by a state of being puzzled by them and starting to explore, grappling his way around, and then becoming more adept at providing an analysis of them and getting to the core meaning. But he never thinks in terms of getting only down to the essential properties. He thinks in some sense that every dream, every content of the unconscious, so going beyond the dream, is a whole in such a way that the whole contains both the essence and the accidents. And because the whole contains both the essence and the accidents, in a sense that flattens the distinction between essence and accident, and all the properties are part of the whole, there's no essence or accidents as such. That's not a TI lead way of proceeding. And although that is something that he subscribed to in terms of method, the very way he writes, voluminously, long sentences, somewhat vague concepts and categories, which allow him to toe the line between conscious and unconscious, between what can be put into words and what cannot really be put into words, between the natural and the supernatural, between the normal and the paranormal, or the psychological and the parapsychological. These are traits of Jung that are very well known and that are part and parcel of his approach and of his insightful approach, insight in general. They're all linked to an NI approach. They're not linked to a TI essentialistic approach. He sees parallels and interwoven themes and archetypes between different cultures, between different individuals, collective unconscious. These are all NI motifs supported by an FE undercurrent. Okay, so what I would actually say is that if anything, Jung has a stronger FE than he has a strong TI. And that could be a claim that deserves to be expanded on a little bit, but it's what I got from his books so far, and at this point I've read a few. And in the Autobiography, I get the same sense. There's very, very strong evidence that Jung is an NI lead. And the Autobiography, I feel like if anyone is interested to learn more about Jung's personality, whether for its own sake or to determine further whether Jung is NI lead or TI lead or something else, the Autobiography is the book to read. In addition to being very interesting, fascinating, and insightful as to his personality and the history of analytical psychology as well. And in fact, once you have accepted that this is clearly an NI lead that's speaking in this book, by reading it, you'll notice there are lots of instances where the content will enrich your understanding, qualitatively speaking. So it's not like an MBTI style list or anything like that. It's a thick book. Qualitatively speaking, will enrich your understanding of how the INFJ consciousness functions. Of course, in this book, there's quite a bit of exploration of that, but in Jung's own account of himself, where he's not aware that he's describing himself as an INFJ, in fact, he didn't even think that. So you can imagine it's very candid. He's being very transparent. He's not trying to portray himself as what he's not. I don't think that was ever his style, but the fact that he didn't even think he was an INFJ reinforces this idea and reinforces this sense. So you get all the content, all the relationship with the dreams, that with the domain of the spiritual, everything that cannot quite make sense from a scientific or mathematical point of view, the symbolism behind it, how to give justice to the truths of those realms, even though they cannot be done justice by rationality, and in fact sometimes will be scorned by the rationalistic people, by the logical people, will be considered to be false and not worth paying attention to. Seeing the commonalities, there's a very strong sense. Jung himself says in the book, I promise you this is true, he said, I always felt I had two personalities. Personality number one, in the world doing my things as a boy, 11 years old, playing with other kids. And this other strange second personality where I was outside of time and I was always picturing myself as a white-haired, bearded, very old man. If this is not a motif of the NI lead, I don't know what it is. Now that's a little bit of a teaser, a little bit of a taster. I don't want to spoil too much of it for you because you might be interested in reading it. I suggest that you have a look at it, And if you've read Ecstatic Soul and you enjoyed it and you thought it was provided lots of insight into the INFJ consciousness, Jung's Autobiography can be read as a qualitative exploration of the INFJ consciousness in a man's real life, on every page, and I guarantee you this is the case. So I recommend you read it, whether that be from this particular lens that I just mentioned, or just as someone who's interested in Jung's life. Again, Jung's internal life. It's the external events are narrated, but they are in some sense they are accessory. They serve as a backdrop which explains at which point he had this internal revelation or this internal experience, which led to another experience, which led him to write this or that book or take a break. And then, but then at some point he falls sick. He's traveling in India and he falls sick. He's in hospital and he has more visions. So the external events are documented, but they're not very detailed because the detail is all in the internal exploration. And that's where the real historical INFJ consciousness of our friend Carl is explored. So I recommend it. In the meantime, like I said, enjoy the last few days of the year. Have a great New Year's Eve. Don't forget that you can follow me on Patreon. There's the link down below as well. And if you join me, become a certified Jung existentialist, €3 a month or more if you want to give more. You have priority in terms of suggesting topics for me to cover in future videos. All right, see you soon, guys. Take care.